Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Christ and Coffee podcast, bringing the church together one coffee hour conversation at a time. Today, we're going to be talking about food and faith, one of my favorite topics, with one of my favorite guests of all time, Nancy Kherlopian, the Armenian foodie herself. Nancy, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Did you miss me?
I did miss you from the first episode.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's sitting about 12 episodes in.
12?
Yeah.
Okay.
We still haven't been shut down.
You couldn't get another guest, could you?
No, we're kind of low on the guest count. So, but this is a topic you're an expert on.
Oh, expert. Okay. People are going to stop listening now.
No, I think they're tuning in just because of your expertise on food.
Oh, boy. Okay. Food.
Food. So what comes to mind when you hear the word food?
Food. Wow. Food is, I think, if you are Armenian or if you know anyone in our family, food is definitely a love language.
Yeah, I think that's what I've learned more and more, that it's next level for certain people that are foodies.
Yeah.
Food is definitely the phrase eat to live, live to eat. There are definitely two types of people on this earth. People who see food as a necessity and people who see it for the reason they exist.
Yeah, I could agree. Definitely. What do you think you are?
I think I was more just utility.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely like a single dude
surviving,
eating $1 slice pizza, still kind of living that dorm room lifestyle. And then when we started dating, it was just this whole level of food and kind of exploring new countries through different cuisines.
Expanded your palate a little bit.
Yeah,
outside of $1 pizzas.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. But the pizza here is, I kind of miss those dollar slices because now we're in LA.
True. Yeah, I definitely miss those dollar slices.
They don't quite make good.
California.
I think everyone in California agrees with that. It's just the dough can't be made because the bagels and the pizzas aren't that great. But they do make better donuts.
Yeah.
The donuts here are phenomenal.
They're in every corner.
And they just have donut written on them.
Yeah.
And they're pretty top notch.
Straightforward, nothing special, just a great baked great donut.
Yeah, and we have like Dunkin' Donuts, which is kind of a joke relatively to a good donut. And then also tacos. You could have good taco spots, but here there's more of them and it's much better.
Southern California.
Plus there's more of the Middle Eastern kebab joints here and there. So there's differences. But New York City, you could have everything there and you won't really find a bad restaurant. Here you can find bad restaurants, but they're good restaurants. You just have to look for them.
Yeah, definitely. You just got to look for them and look for whatever it is you're looking for. There are a lot in every city. But in New York, you can't survive unless you're a great restaurant.
Right.
So there's
it's
that.
Definitely survival of the fittest.
Yeah. But it's becoming more so that way here, I've noticed, especially where we've been. I mean, LA is that way. Orange County's been that way. I mean, everything's expensive in California just as much as it is in New York City. So you have to be great to survive. So there's that.
Yeah. And speaking of survival, I think we forget, because we're so blessed with so much food here, how much of a survivalistic like food is something we need to survive on. I know it sounds very simple.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, because we eat so much in America, we forget that simple fact that something we're eating was once living, had to sacrifice itself so that we could eat. And it's a constant reminder for us that we shouldn't be ungrateful that we have the sustenance to keep us alive.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a fine line between eating to live and living to eat, because you don't want to be a gluttonous either.
Right.
But you also want to enjoy and appreciate the craftsmanship behind preparing a good meal. So, you got to find that balance.
Right. Because I think the difference between gluttony is a selfish endeavor. You're eating by yourself. You're hoarding as much food as possible. Addictive behavior of various kinds fall in the category of gluttony.
Okay. So ordering everything on the menu, it's not a problem then.
No,
You're
I think
so excited. You want to try everything. You're not a gluttonous person.
right. Is this a confession? What's going on? Are you trying to confess publicly?
I just want to try everything to properly rate a restaurant
Right.
based on the craftsmanship, and the only way to do that
Is to taste everything.
is to try everything.
But
The chef spent hours and hours.
You're appreciating the craft.
Fine tune and make sure he properly created everything the way he intended. So
right,
that's why you gotta try. That's why it's fun going to restaurants with groups.
Well, I think that this is the big idea.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between gluttony and festivity.
Oh, okay. I like
so
this.
In the church,
I'm gonna use all these against.
Well, you already order everything on the menu. You take little bites, and I end up fat because I have to finish the plates.
You get excited.
I do
excited.
until the paycheck, until the bill comes, and then I'm like, why?
No, but going in groups, I actually enjoy the communion and the community aspect of eating a meal and sharing a meal with friends and family members. Because if you think about it, everything we do, every time we hang out, every time we're going to meet up with someone, it's not, hey, come take a seat, let's have a chat. It's, hey, let's go grab coffee. Hey, let's go out to eat. Let's go to dinner. Let's go, whatever, grab a bite to eat. So it's always over food. The most,
right.
The
It's
best
the most,
conversations, relationships are built over meals.
Every date is, oh, you like to eat? Oh, I like to eat too. Let's go out,
Yeah.
And then every friendship is revolved around that. And I mean, the family that eats together stays together, like more so than prays together. But ideally, you do both.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
take notes of all these these comments I'm going to use later.
Yes, it's recorded for eternity on the internet, so don't worry about it. But this distinction between being a gluttonous person and then being like the church has church feasts in their calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever there's a holiday, the word uses feast to celebrate, to rejoice with other people, remembering what God has done, and to just spend time with others. And if you look at Jesus's ministry, it's all around the table.
Mm-hmm.
And even the fact that his thing that he reminds the church to do is communion, which is remember me. How do we remember him? Through communion, through the sacrifice. Because just as something is sacrificed for us to live, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, Christ is that ultimate sacrifice that sustains us, and we're reminded to eat the bread and the wine of that sustaining, life-giving act he did 2,000 years ago. And it's just quite a beautiful theological lens to see scripture through the narrative of food. What's the first sin? Eating the forbidden fruit, a meal without God. What's God's redemption? God coming down to eat a meal with us. And we're reminded to eat meals of that event. So eternity is spent eating food. That the image is used, the marriage supper of the Lamb. There's this wedding feast. There's this beautiful thing in the afterlife where food is still part of the equation.
Yeah.
I think that's good news. That we still could eat in the afterlife, theologically.
First miracle,
water and twine.
Yeah. Open bar.
That's
Open
right.
bar, baby.
Gluttony.
Oh, yeah, it's true though, right?
but also the Bible is interesting too, because I think the pandemic made us appreciate food a bit more in group settings. Because in the Armenian context that we were initially serving, they're good at community and good at like luncheons and whatnot. And I'd always say before the pandemic, we're not a social club. We're not just here to eat food and whatnot. I preach against that extreme. But then the pandemic hit, and it was like, I kind of missed that.
Yeah.
The importance of coffee hour, the importance of having luncheons. And if you read Acts chapter 2, it gives the description of the ideal church at the end of that chapter. It says they were dedicated, they were devoted to the apostles' teachings. They were devoted to one another in fellowship, but they were also devoted to the breaking of the bread, which is meals, having communion in that meal, the Eucharist, to give thanks to God. So a marker of a healthy church is how much food is broken between its members.
Yeah. I mean, those are the times when you're truly getting to know your members, right, of the church. It's, of course, going to church. We've talked about this before too. It's not just going to church. It's also building relationships the way Jesus did with us, breaking bread with us, breaking bread with his disciples. So it's the same way with church members or family members, right? So that's the way we get to know them, and that's the way they get to know us, and we spend time together. And the more time we're spending together, the deeper the relationships grow. So there's always something beautiful happening every time there's a meal being shared on a table. Yeah.
I think that's a great point too, in the sense of, how do you know who your best friends are? How many meals have you had with them?
That's definitely,
you know, who are your closest people, the people you eat the most with.
Yeah.
And there's something just simple and beautiful about that.
Yeah. And then the more you hang out with him, the more you're able to know what foods to recommend to them.
That's right. What kind of foods do I like, you think?
Well, you'll eat anything.
Oh, thank you, I guess.
No, but you've definitely have expanded your palate since we've been married for almost 6 years now. But Jay Biz, I've been learning more about his, what types of food he likes, and we talk about food all the time. We're actually talking about this place today, the Chicago diner, Portillo's. Yeah. I've been calling it Portillo's.
Jay Biz here, our producer. He's Cuban.
Yeah.
Cuban food is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems like Armenia used to be part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And that destroyed the culture of food.
Mm-hmm.
How did Cuban food become Cuban food, and how is Cuban food under communism? This is just a curious question, because food and culture are hand in hand.
Yeah. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know that like a lot of traditional food comes from the island. It was only 1958 that Castro took over, so a lot of people, there was a good relationship between Cuba and America prior to, so there was a lot of back and forth. So there's a lot of Cubans in Florida already. Florida had a big Cuban culture going on. A lot of that stuff was well seated in there, so the Cuban food culture still is preserved.
It predates the communism.
It predates the communism, and then things like the Cuban sandwich was actually created in Florida.
So, fascinating.
Yeah, so
which is what ham and
Cuban pork, which I believe it's from the shoulder, and then it's on like a Cuban French bread and Swiss cheese, pickles, mustard, and sometimes mayonnaise. But yeah, so that came up in Tampa.
Wow.
So Cubans in Florida, or Cubans in Cuba, don't know what a Cuban sandwich is. They just think it's just a sandwich.
It's kind of like Chinese food in China.
Or Lebanese when they went to Mexico. They're the ones who actually created the carne asada tacos.
Oh, pastor.
What?
The pastor tacos.
Lebanese did?
Yeah.
What?
So Lebanese immigrants with the shawarma, before shawarma was a thing.
Yeah.
They came and the kind of the spit came from
the shawarma.
The immigrants.
Really? Yeah.
And the fascinating thing about it too, talking about food and cultures and religion for that matter, in Islam and in Judaism, you can't eat pork.
Yeah.
But it's kosher in Christianity, and it's there's not shawarma pork as much.
Yeah.
But in the non-Muslim areas, like, let's shawarma the pork too,
Huh.
Yeah. Well, they realized that in the Mexican culture, they love pork.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we know shawarma. Let's just grab their spices and what they like to eat and do it in the form that we make shawarmas, and then turn it into a taco.
Right.
That's how.
And then Americans were like, let's turn this Cuban sandwich into a sandwich. We like making sandwiches in America.
Well, I mean, like Cubans came up with the Cuban sandwich.
Yeah.
But it was just the fact that it was done in Florida after the fact.
Yeah. It's like going to Beijing, there's no Chinese food. That those were Chinese immigrants.
Yeah.
And they had this separate, it's an American cuisine.
Yeah.
I think the beautiful thing about American culture is American food itself is not great, but it allows for innovation of these cultures to come and kind of create this melting pot or this fusion of flavors. That's the beautiful thing about America. And American culture at its best is this welcoming of the immigrant, welcoming of these different foods. At its worst, it's junk food, fast food. It's the exact opposite of what we were talking about earlier. It's the live eat to live mindset.
Yeah.
Let's eat as quick as possible. Let's be as individualistic as possible. Let me just order food in my car, eat it in my car, by myself. And sadly, it's connected to loneliness, health issues, and the lack of fellowship and family. And ultimately, the sign of a healthy family and community is food. Culture is ultimately defined by what you eat. You are what you eat. And what do you think are some defining markers of the Armenian culture? Because we're both Armenian Lebanese, and I think it's some of the best food. And I know we have a bias to saying that, but I think we could say it's, up there at least.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about like our kind of collective fusion we have with this Middle Eastern Armenian thing that we were born into?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that we're really big on mezas and having, it's never just coming and having one thing.
Right.
It's a sharing of everything I have in my fridge.
Right.
I think there's something beautiful to that. It's very generous.
It's the hospitality piece of the Middle Eastern
aspect of
culture,
it.
which is
Yeah.
the biggest difference, I think,
Yeah.
between Western individualism
Yeah.
and the Middle
And
Eastern culture.
It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with, wealth or how much, money you have. It's more about, even when we go to Armenia
Right.
and we visited, the villages.
They just emptied their fridges.
emptied
If
their-
they even had a fridge for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just, there was an abundance no matter where we went, and who we were talking to. And it was just, again, a way of showing love and care and hospitality. My house is your house mindset. So I think that's also very Christian, right? So I think that's the core of what it means to share a meal. It's more than just sharing a meal. It's showing love. It's showing grace. It's showing just hospitality.
Yeah.
I want to get to know you. I want to, and also it's not just for 30 minutes or an hour. It's like a whole day. You,
Right.
go from breakfast to dinner sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
And I think what I love about that is it's just like you said, it's very Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Be hospitable. And I do notice that like growing up, everyone would want to come to my house because we were hospitable.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee it was the same way for you,
Yeah.
because the food was at your house growing up. The generosity was there.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's more of it's a spiritual practice more than a resource thing.
Yeah.
You could be hospitable with very little,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely a sacrificial thing. And I think this love language piece is kind of interesting because Gary Chapman wrote the 5 love languages. I think the act of eating has all the love languages in it.
Yeah.
Quality time,
Yeah.
physical touch, which is you could put taste, smell, and fellowship there. Words of affirmation, you're going to be talking, you're going to be speaking life to people.
Yeah.
What are the other love languages? I forget. Oh, gifts, the gift
Yes.
of that you give something literally that's
Mhm.
edible in that moment that will perish unless you touch it
Mm-hmm.
and eat it. And and then there's the quality time of it all.
Yeah.
It kind of is this summation of love. And again, going back to the Eucharist or communion, it's this reminder that God loves us. Therefore, go love people. We're in this promise of love. This is the marker,
Mm-hmm.
the eating event. That's like the main ritual for all Christians is to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember to eat, and remember to eat about my sacrifice,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It creates such a strong bond between people, and whether it's a person you just met or a person you've known for a very long time. Same thing with like Thanksgiving,
Right.
There's the act of everyone coming together, spending time cooking together, preparing. I think it becomes more valuable. The process of something is more valuable than the thing itself sometimes.
Right.
And the actions and the conversations that took place while, versus when you sit down, it's really like 10 minutes of eating, right? Or 20 minutes, depending on how fast you eat.
Right. I eat pretty
With
fast.
Hag, it's like 5 minutes.
Right. I grew up with cousins and a brother, and if you didn't eat fast, you wouldn't.
Survival mode, right?
Yeah. You would miss out on the food if you didn't eat fast.
Yeah. I think when we first got married and you came here for the first time, met my family, they were all concerned, like, did I not like the food? I'm like, no, you guys didn't see how
like,
how fast he ate.
I love the food. In fact, I just like a human vacuum. I just
Yeah.
inhaled it.
Exactly. But yeah,
That still happens today. I still get like, why aren't you eating?
and that's why you probably have,
Putting on some dad
and just like
pounds.
no, you have trouble digesting.
Oh
properly.
yeah. 'Cause I'm not in my metabolism prime anymore. That's correct.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just the process of anything is what makes something valuable and, worthwhile. So
I think that's why it's important to say thanks too, to just take a minute and thank God,
Yeah.
that there was this process that led to this food. And I think we miss out on it because everything is so super convenient here. And sometimes the super convenient food is not the healthiest food, but it's also, um, we lose that sight of to just be grateful.
yeah.
The act of grace. I mean,
Mhm.
Thanksgiving shouldn't be just let's be thankful for food once a year and then pig out. It should be a constant lifestyle, hospitality, gratitude. These should be Christian virtues,
Hmm.
and it's reflective on how we eat. Do you think you could learn a lot about a person based on how they eat?
Oh, 100%.
How so?
Oh, 1000%.
It seems like you're an expert on this.
Well, I think there's a lot you can learn. Well, the basics is what types of, likes and dislikes, preferences, but mannerisms, manners in general.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
You can learn about how generous they are. You can learn about whether or not they're thinking about, just I think manners, right? Or respect, level of respect. There's so much you can learn about someone by sharing a meal with them. When I used to do the matchmaking, I used to coach my clients on this. There's so much you will learn on this first date if you just pay attention. Do they ask you what you want, what you like, what you don't like? Are they paying attention to you? Are they listening to you? Or are they just going at it while they're eating? So many things you can learn about someone. In a dating situation, but just in general, you can too.
Yeah,
I mean, even with our kids, right? We're constantly telling them to chew with your mouth closed or use your fork, not your hands, even though they're babies and toddlers. But there's just so much you can learn.
I mean, speaking of our kids, I am super impressed with this whole biological, earthly, beautiful, phenomenal sacrifice every mom makes with breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Nursing,
yeah.
Like we're literally born into this world. We need to eat right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like as every human being, you have to be attached to another person.
Mm-hmm. It's a blessing for sure. Yeah.
And it sets this intimate trajectory of food and attachment right away.
Yeah.
It's in the DNA. It's in the biology. And it's beautiful to witness and to think about like Jesus being breastfed by Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one wants to talk about that, but I think that's what makes the incarnation truly God being one of us is this attachment we are all born into.
Yeah.
With to our moms to survive. And what's the spirituality of that in a nutshell?
Yeah,
I can't imagine what that's like because I can't relate.
Yeah. Well, there's so much. I mean, during this phase of life, well, back to back. I mean, I nursed Xander for over a year, about I think like 14 months, and then hopefully with Tyson, I plan to do it for a year. He's already 10 months almost.
More months.
Yeah, but there's just so much. It's such a blessing to be able to have that for God. That's God's blessing for me because I get to share that bond with the babies. But also it makes me reflect on just how much of an amazing father we have, because every time the baby cries, you know quickly to go and to feed them, to nurse them, to just take care of their emotions, whatever they're feeling, their hunger. So it makes me reflect on how God is with us too, right? Like every time we have a need, he's quickly there. He's there emotionally. He's there to give us whatever it is we're crying out for. So it really has made me reflect on that as a mom with the kids and just how God does that with us on a day-to-day basis. And we kind of take it for granted sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to, I know a lot of moms can't, and
right.
it just doesn't work for them, or it just didn't work for them. But yeah, I mean, it's been definitely a sacrifice too, right? It's
Right. Time.
yeah. I always say too, like working was so much easier than being a mom
Right.
and nursing and the whole thing,
'Cause
right?
work has a end date, end time.
Yeah.
Being a mom is
Also, it's like
time. Yeah.
yeah, it just felt like when you're at work, you're behind a computer. It's
Yeah.
like you can do whatever you want. You can go grab a coffee. You can go, you know, do whatever it is, be as creative as you want. And with your time with the babies, it's different. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But
Right.
yeah,
So you have a blog, food Instagram account, Armenian Foodie
well, Instagram.
Instagram account, and that kind of started when we were on we were in a month and a half in Armenia, and we just
Yeah.
started taking kind of a track record of all these restaurants that started springing up because it used to be part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Food was awful when I was there 15
Yeah.
years ago. Talking about if the culture is free, if the culture is more spiritually alive, I think the first thing that shoots up is the food quality.
Yeah.
Plus, you also have a fusion of the kind of the Armenian Lebanese we came through
Mhm.
with the Syrian civil war and
Mhm.
the economic crisis in Lebanon. So more immigrants of Western Armenians have come to America. But it's been great to capture that,
Yeah.
that fusion. And then now it's just wherever we go,
Yeah.
we're taking pictures before we eat, but it's actually serving a function.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it gets all messy and everyone's hands are and everything.
Yeah, especially with the kids.
Yeah.
But it is quite a cool thing to just to celebrate the food and to be appreciative of it. But then the problem with that, with everyone does this, by the way, we all take pictures of our food for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
We don't think about the pre-production and the post-production of that meal, right? No one takes a picture of the dirty dishes they have to clean after they made a meal, or
Yeah.
sometimes they do the prep, but they're not gonna show a picture of an animal being sacrificed before it's on the plate. There is a messiness to it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's part of the life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went to a restaurant opening once and there were all the food bloggers were there, every media there just to capture, the best possible pictures they could of the meals. And it was just fascinating to see there was all these beautiful meals prepared, but no one was touching them and no one could eat them because everyone was just trying to get the best shot. And by the end of it, no one was able to eat any of it because it was already cold and messed up. And
Yeah.
so it's just interesting that a lot of these food bloggers don't actually eat the food. They just there to take the pictures. But I'm like, I'm here for it all.
Right. You really care about the
Yeah.
food. So what makes a good dish? Because usually if you watch those cooking shows, it's funny how many Americans love watching cooking shows, but they can't cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not
What do you mean?
not generalizing.
They don't cut.
Do you feel like if you were born in America versus being born in Lebanon, do you think you would be as much of a chef?
Well, my mom,
but it's from the family.
It's like generational too. I think a lot of maybe Armenian families or Middle Eastern or I don't know, just a lot of ethnic groups could probably say this, but just learning from the person that fed you growing up.
Right. But I feel like not just the Western Armenian culture, but food if the next generation doesn't continue the recipes,
Yeah.
the culture is lost. It's not just language. It's not just
but also we were talking about this earlier, but it's the love of the process of cooking, which means not just the cooking part. The cooking part's the easy part. It's getting all the ingredients together, getting all the supplies together that you need, making sure you have all the measuring material, and then the cleaning. No one likes the cleaning part. It's the worst part that no one ever sees. Right. We were just talking about this, right, J-Biz? Because I was telling J-Biz here, I was like, I feel like you're a great cook. And he's like, I probably am, but I hate the process.
Not probably. I am.
No, I think you're probably...
No, I'm pretty
I'm going to challenge you.
Well, we'll find out one day when he invites us over and we have a meal. But what are your thoughts on American culture versus Cuban culture with hot food related?
I can't really say because I didn't grow up in Cuban culture. Like,
You-
there's no Cuban culture in California.
Okay.
So
But I mean, in your home, your parents.
well, I grew up kind of Americanized.
Oh.
So like my dad was in the army, worked in the post office. They were here for, gosh, my dad came over like 59.
Yeah.
And my mom came over in 62. So they were here for a long time before I came around. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
and my dad, like, true blue, like everything, like American, like he was all in because he was able to live the life that he could actually live. So
Right.
so
Yeah.
he didn't really try to force any kind of thing on me. He just wanted me to
Enjoy freedom.
enjoy
Yeah.
life the way I wanted to. So like, because I used to speak Spanish, and then as a kid I decided I didn't want to. So he was like, okay, fine.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a problem in a lot of ethnic parents with their kids because it's the language gets lost and it's the food that gets lost. I think by and large,
Yeah.
and I think more millennials don't cook as much.
Yeah. Well, there's just so much.
They're working. I
They're
mean,
working, and there's just an abundance of options of like delivering, getting
Right.
food delivered, getting food.
delivery's killing me though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
financially or
Yeah.
It's
It's actually
bad.
more expensive.
It's
yeah, way more expensive.
It can be, but it's like at the same time, it's like I'll go to the market and just to try to get food just for me, it's almost the same
That's
price as
true,
if I
That's
went
the
to
other
get
problem.
delivery.
That's true too.
yeah,
Yeah.
just add an extra $50 or $100 to big shopping runs. Like at this point with the inflation. I think one of our church members at Church for the Nations, she she's a retired home ec teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and now home ec is not being taught at all.
Mm.
I wonder how much of that is kind of the poo-pooing of, I think there's a disrespect for just, being a parent or mother specifically and having the home ec, like the home ec skills,
Well, it's not even like poo-pooing like a parenthood role. It's just self-sufficiency. It's
Yeah.
like to be self-sufficient, like operating as an adult. Like they've completely gutted all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything is fast. Like,
Yeah.
There's all these YouTube videos on like how to quickly prep a meal in under 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, well,
What kind of meal is this?
yeah. Or just everything is about doing it as fast as possible.
But that's the
Yeah.
American way. It's very
Yeah.
pragmatic, very quick, very short term,
Yeah.
but
Only-
it'll have
all-
long-term
one-
consequence.
All you need to do is have one pan and the one pan meal. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's the point of that?
Or
What?
we'll
That's
ship
not-
you the
no.
ingredients you need to create this.
Yeah. Sometimes
I
it's
tried that.
good. It's
I
good.
tried
Is
that.
that good?
But-
It's good.
Well, it's still the whole thing of like coming home and it's like, oh, I'm so tired. I
Yeah.
don't want to cook.
Right.
Because you like they give you everything, but you still have to like put it all together. You have to like do all the
Fair enough.
cutting and all that stuff. And I was like, I don't have time. For this.
Ooh.
I
No,
don't have time for this.
we had
Yeah.
a friend who was a Michelin star, and the junk he would eat after his like.
This is common amongst chefs,
I know.
actually, because they're just so exhausted from preparing meals day in and out.
Yeah.
They come home and they actually what they do. What's that one chef? The Korean chef,
David Chang. I
Dave
think.
Chang. Yeah, I think he talks about this too, which is how one of his restaurants came out, where it was the food that him and his, all the chefs in his restaurant would eat afterwards was just like junk food, like chicken wings
Yeah.
and all the like scraps they would just.
So it doesn't
make.
look good but tastes good. And,
Yeah, but then he actually made a restaurant with.
Yeah,
that.
momofuku,
Yeah,
just ramen.
Yeah.
Delicious ramen and
even
sandwiches,
though
pork
it's
rolls.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like creative juices, last
Yeah.
minute. Let's get this going.
yeah. But also this whole idea of having a meal with your family at the end of the day is so important and so lost now.
That's lost as well.
Yeah,
See, I didn't even grow up with that.
yeah.
Well, most people haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I used to just eat in my room.
Yeah. But that was something that till this day with my mom, I always tell my mom, like, thanks for making that
A priority.
important and a priority. And even she always said, I miss those days where I knew everyone was going to come to the table, share how their day was, and then go on
Right.
do whatever it was they're going to do afterwards. But she also another special thing with my mom's love language is cooking for someone and feeding them. Is even if because I would go to basketball practice or whatever practice it was, my brother's the same thing. She always had the food on the counter
Right.
So we always knew there was food, even though we always knew if like they had already eaten, we would just go and
The food would be
someone
there.
would come and sit and eat with you. So that there was always that, which was really nice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but it's what you're talking about is becoming less normative
Yeah.
and more so, I
Mhm.
think, and it's a huge part of your spiritual life. I think that we've lost sight of the spirituality of all this,
Mhm. Yeah.
of community, of
And being
sacrifice,
busy.
of being hospitable, of even Sabbathing at this point.
Yeah.
Because I think a large part of why people are eating by themselves is because they're too busy, or
Yeah.
people are working different shifts,
Prioritizing.
and it's just economically not feasible.
Mhm.
Especially a single parent home, I can't imagine.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think if we take the spiritual aspect of food more seriously, it'll help with our spiritual walk, and it'll just make us more healthier in what we eat, who we eat it with, and just being more grateful and appreciative of each meal.
Yeah.
There's
That's
this,
probably why there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like starting your day
yeah,
in community, ending your day in community, and even at lunch, whether it's like with your coworkers,
Yeah.
like you're not meant to have a meal alone. You're not supposed to do fellowship or not fellowship. You're not supposed to do community alone.
right, and
So,
and the meals are the number one way to make sure that
mhm.
no one is ever too busy enough to not eat.
Yeah.
Right, so that's the main way you connect with people. As much as
Mhm.
people could work, the most busiest person needs to eat at one point, and
Yeah.
you could we schedule our meetings based on food oftentimes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Most of the time, to be honest, or a cup of coffee, keep it more simple.
Mhm.
Yeah, Biz, any final thoughts on this conversation?
Final? I don't know.
Well, it doesn't have to be final. I don't have to make it so serious.
Just to like kind of go back to the whole like prep thing. Have you ever seen the Japanese? They have like a ceremony for like the first catch of like the tuna
No.
for like the
Oh.
year. It's a huge thing where it's like they have this whole ordeal where everyone comes around and they do this whole ceremonial process of cutting the fish into the sections for the different cuts of tuna for sushi,
Mhm.
and then people like will partake and like if you've never done it, it's actually really cool. I went to a convention one time and they did it there, and it's like to have like
The first catch.
like just to like get it fresh off, like fresh cut from the fish. It's
Yeah.
something else entirely. It tastes so good, but
Wow. Yeah.
it's interesting to like see people like partake in this whole process of the cutting of the
Mhm.
food essentially.
Yeah.
So
There was a restaurant in Manhattan that did that. I can't remember. I think it actually shut down after the pandemic. Shoot, what was it called? It was right on 40th and like 7th Ave. I'm like blanking now, but anyway, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, it's a cool thing to watch.
That's great, and the rituals connected to just the cultures and the practices. It's so deeply spiritual. If you read the Old Testament, the stuff that people ignore, it's a lot of dietary rules and
Mhm.
how animals need to be sacrificed for atonement. But we kind of we gloss over the deeply spiritual aspects of created things that God gave us that are just in nature, to appreciate. And I think it's always important to just keep us reminded that something was sacrificed so we could live, and that's food in a nutshell. And just going back to communion, Jesus sacrificed himself. He's the bread of life, the manna from heaven come down to earth, and to just be grateful for life, and the sacrifices that lead to life,
Mhm.
and just the different cultural expressions of what that means is kind of great to just analyze and experience and to enjoy with other people. I mean, we love to eat different cultural foods. It's part of exploring, celebrating cultures.
Too, and
It's
just
the number one way to celebrate
you
cultures.
can learn about a lot about the cultures, like we said.
Yeah, not just people, but the cultures themselves.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Nancy and JBiz. We're gonna wrap this conversation up. However, we could go on and on, but maybe we will over dinner later today,
Yeah.
talking about these subject matters. Thank you everyone for watching the Christ and Coffee podcast. Please join us next week for brand new episodes. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. What kind of foods do you like? What's the spirituality of food? If you have that question you want to contribute to this conversation, please do comment below. And thank you again for watching. Remember to stay caffeinated, my friends, and God bless you. See you next week. We love you.